So today we're going to go into another article that talks about Gen X is the coolest generation in the history of the world. Stick around, let's talk about it.
All I need are some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rad, back with another video. Another video that piggybacks off of the coolness of Gen X. Now, to be fair, I actually read this article first, and it references the article on the last video I did because that article was written first, and then this one kind of piggybacks off of that. So I kind of wanted to do that article first, which I did. This is the thumbnail for that video, and I'll have a link in the description. You can go back and watch it after you watch this video. Um, but this particular article is from the Independent. Again, there are some. This is a British kind of take on things, so to the American audience, it might not. Some of the things might not make sense, right, or seem a little weird, or they may do some of the things a little bit differently that we do. But as you learn from the one video over here that I did with Glenn, my mate from England, we were all very similar when it comes to being Gen X. This one is by Bill Burrows, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but these are his words, not mine, and I'll kind of commentate on them. But the article is, yes, Generation X is the coolest generation, and whisper it, the happiest too. As a survey confirms, the 80s and 90s were rated the highest for quality of life. We are the generation that was shaped by those eras, and they still are showing people that came after we have a good time. So sorry, my camera is kind of blocking this side of the article. So I'm going to move that over just a little bit there to read it. So let's go ahead and get into it. Kind of starts off with a little storytelling here. So if it weren't for the fact that she was wearing an Apple Watch, it could have been 1992. It was about 11:30 p.m. The night had just got going, and her eyes were the size of saucers. The club in Manchester was heaving. Love has come around, was filling the floor, and her phone was ringing in her bum bag. She ignored it twice, and then it pinged. Swearing as she tried to find it, she then started shaking her head and texting at the same time. It's my son, she said. He's going on holiday and wants to know if he should buy travel insurance. Jesus Christ, it's Saturday night. Her text back simply said, Tommy, I'm out. Then she rolled her eyes and disappeared into the crowd. Hang on. What the hell am I doing in a club? I'm the same age as Humphrey Bogart when he died. And it's right. And is it right that I'm wearing combat trousers, a t shirt, and Stan Smiths, and filling the bottles of water from the cold tap in the toilets? In America, we would say just filling up bottles with tap water from the sink, but you get my point. And wait, what's my ex girlfriend doing here too? She's now the same age as Diana Dors when she died. The answer to those questions, respectively, are that we are having another brilliant night out wearing the same kind of thing we did in 1992 and dating again after more than 30 years since the Manchester scene. So, as I said in my last video about Gen Z starting to wear a lot of the styles that we wear, um, those were the styles that we had back in the day. And if you can still fit into those clothes and you still, look somewhat sane while you're wearing them, then I don't see a problem that somebody that's 50 like myself, about to be 51 in a couple months, we should still be able to dress that way and not get side-eyed by people because they think that we're the old person dressing young, when in turn, you're the young person dressing old. There you go. And we're not alone. Gen Xers, of course, those born between 1965 and 1980, are now in their 50s and still doing what they were doing after the Berlin Wall came down and have never really stopped doing, having fun and living life. So, yeah. Now, obviously, I'm a father of three. So, a lot of the things that I used to do, in 1992, 1991, I definitely don't do anymore But as if you've seen from my one video about my love of electronic, techno, and house music, I have traveled quite extensively around to some of the top clubs in Chicago and in New York or Brooklyn, and partied until 6 o'clock in the morning in my 40s just 5 years ago. So, not something that I do every weekend. I definitely don't live in Manchester where there's a big nightlife. San Antonio, of course, does, but try to find a techno or house club in San Antonio. It's kind of hard. So, moving on, lumping some of us in the younger cohort of boomers born between 46 and 64, The Economist noted recently, whereas young people are addicted to their phones, more anxious than previous generations, and far less likely to use mind altering substances. Good job, guys. It's good that you don't do that. Or party recklessly. Their grandparents belong to a generation that experimented with sex, drugs, and rock and roll. As they reach older age, they are now giving up their old. They are not giving up their old habits. Although not a grandparent, I am firmly in the parent having more fun than their kids' generation camp. You can't move for the memes. You can't move for the memes of us on social media, showing the kids today how clubbing could be done with footage from big nights out at the end of the 90s. No phones in sight, just a mass of sweaty bodies having a great time. Such memes are usually accompanied by the message, these are your parents now, or in the 90s, clubbing just hit different, with contrasting images of today where everyone looking Instagram perfect and trying hard with a fun factor of zero. Now, I have done a few shorts on this channel and posted them on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah, that I've done just that, and where it's some people dancing hard to trance in the '90s, to Josh Wink's Higher State of Consciousness, and yeah, they are literally your parents. That was us. That was me back then in that time. Maybe not as good as a dancer as they are. Also, want to make a side note here that gabbing and hawking is really making a comeback with the Gen Z kids, something that most Americans have no clue about what it is. But I do have to say, once again, Gen X created that in the early 90s in Rotterdam. And now the Gen Z kids, like my son Roth, can actually dance to it, are actually taking on to this. I think it's pretty cool because, again, it's got our roots in Gen X. And so, for those of you subscribers that watch me overseas in Europe, uh, do you know what gabbing is? And if so, have you gabbed? And do you still gab? So drop a comment below and let me know. And for those of you that don't know what it is, you just have to go look it up. I'll spell it out for you right here. You can go and look it up. Not for everybody. Definitely, it's not for my knees anymore, but it's super cool to watch people do it. So where did I leave off here? Okay. So go to a gig with an audience in their 40s or above. There are plenty, and you likely will not see a single camera phone being held aloft. We'd rather be in the moment. Thanks. When I go out, I'll take a few pictures and stuff like that. But when it comes to being at a concert, I often feel a little weird videoing it, simply because the artist. I know this sound weird. The artist makes their money doing that, so they might be recording it, putting it up in 4K, or going to have some special or whatever where you can go and you can watch it that way. Back in the day, they used to put the concerts on VHS, and I've got some great ones. Got some really great ones. Family Values Tour. Love that with Korn and Limp Bizkit, Ice Cube. Pop that in every once in a while and watch it. But my point with that is that everybody pulls out their cell phone. I'll get some pictures. I'll get, a scan of some stuff. But yeah, other than that, my phone's in my pocket and I'm enjoying the music. And I think that's just the way it should be. But hey, that's a sign of the times. So dubbing us, quote, the new problem generation, The Economist have the data to back it up. So this is a little crazy for me because, I'm a married man and I've been married many times, but I've pretty much been married my entire adult life, right? So sex In the 4 years to 2023, cases of new syphilis infections in those over the age of 65 grew by 31%. So 65-year-olds are not Gen X, those are boomers. So it's the boomers that are getting syphilis. So despite having already shot up in the previous 5 years, drugs in England and Wales, deaths of people over 50 made up more than a third of drug misuse deaths in 2022, up from just 13% 2 decades before, and deaths caused by cocaine are now more numerous among the old than the young. Now, I will have to say this. If these older people are doing drugs and if they're going into it doing them like the way they did in 1991 and 1992, that's the problem, because unfortunately you have fentanyl mixed in everything out there now. So if they're going and doing these party drugs like they did in the 90s, we didn't have to worry about that back then. Well, now you do. So that's why I just say just stick to some alcohol, and I think you'll be good if you want to go out and club and have a good time. But not that I do partake in those anymore. I do not. But it's just too dangerous, man. It's just too dangerous. So it's just not worth it. I want to live to a ripe old age of 120, as they say we can, and I don't want to, off myself by partying with something I shouldn't be taking. So rock and roll. Not only are Gen Xers still listening to the same music, if you follow my channel, you know that I do. The musicians who made it are either still making it or have reformed to make some more. It was nice of The Economist to notice. Then several weeks later, Vogue jumped on the bandwagon. But rather than Evan's concern, it turns out they're actually jealous. And this is referring to the article video that I did last week in a piece entitled, "Hear Me Out, What If Gen Xers Are Actually the Cool Ones?" Which we are. A journalist born in the 90s, therefore a young millennial, writes, alongside all of this finger pointing among the generations are claims that actually we were the cool ones. No, it was me. But what if it was none of us? What if the cool ones are actually those unbothered people that nobody talks about? These people right here. So if you haven't seen that video, again, there'll be a link in the description for you to go and check that one out. So continuing on, it's great that they can all find the time between anxiety attacks and discussing their guilt over entitlement and self-diagnose that they might exist on the spectrum to even think about whether another generation is cool or not. But seriously, don't bother. The cool ones have always been the unbothered people that nobody talks about. Welcome to the party. It's been going on for decades, but better late than never. It's nice that Gen Z are getting the memo too. It is our children who are now raiding our wardrobe and wrecking our CDs and vinyl, filling up their Spotify playlist with everything we ever listened to, plus Fontaine's DC. Hold on a minute. You mean this Fontaine's DC? Yeah. If you guys don't know who they are, you got to go check them out. They're a post-punk Irish band that formed in 2014, and they are awesome. They got this old school vibe to it. You would think it was published in the 90s, and just a brilliant band. Brilliant band. Go check them out. And I had that on vinyl. So they put all of their stuff on vinyl as well as cassettes. So that's even cool. We're on hand with advice about how to deal with anxiety too. We've been there. If you think Donald Trump and the White House and the climate crisis and the war in the Middle East and Ukraine are alarming, and they are, so he's obviously one of those people.
How dare you?
Or the housing crisis and creeping menace of AI causes for concern, again, yes, we have the perspective of living under the threat of imminent nuclear holocaust and had years to work out what we would do in the estimated 4 minutes between the air attack warning and instant annihilation. I think we're supposed to go hide under our desks, right? That's what we do when a nuke hits. We just hide under a desk and we're safe. So, Irish novelist Garrett Carr remembers watching the film Threads on TV in 1984 with only 3 channels at one time. which, we had. We actually had, I think, four. We had ABC, CBS, ABC, CBS, NBC, and we had PBS. So we did have four. We all do. We all remember that. It was an all too realistic depiction of a nuclear attack in Sheffield. Quote, and again, I don't know this story because this is over in England. I was watching it with my mother and one of her friends. He recalls her friend said, "What would we do with our children if there's a nuclear war?" And my mother said, "It would be best to just shoot them." And I was just sitting there, age 10, listening. He can laugh about it now, but then that's what's today generations would call a coping mechanism. We had plenty of them, and it's hardly surprising. And I think that's a good point. We had ways to cope. We did have coping mechanisms. I don't understand the psychology behind that, but I would have to say, I guess that's why, we're that generation that no one talks about, or until a couple years ago, no one talked about. Now that's all everybody talks about. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know. But is that something that we ever really dealt with, or is it still in the backs of our minds that somehow is baggage that we carry around for the rest of our lives? But I do have to say we cope with it a lot better. We are the generation that grew up with Margaret Thatcher and 3 million unemployed, interest rates shooting up to 17%, the Yorkshire Ripper, the IRA mainland bombing campaign, and Jimmy Savile as the ideal go for making children's dreams come true. Now, I remember Margaret Thatcher. I don't know about the interest rates over there, but I know the interest rates were quite high in the 70s in America. I don't know who the Yorkshire Ripper is, and we know all about the IRA. And then Jimmy Savile. I didn't really know too much about him until the American version of him has been on the news lately. And that whole thing, the Jeffrey guy, apparently this guy, Jimmy Savile, is kind of the same. So, did I mention AIDS and the government shock ads that led to millions of young teenagers, gay and straight, associating sex with a long, lingering death? Yes, we had all that. But in a YouGov survey, respondents were asked to assess 16 periods of time throughout history, starting 400 years back based on quality of life. Two consecutive periods ranked the highest, the 1980s and the 1990s. Is it any surprise? And this might be the key to why, because we and the cohort of Gen X and so-called geriatric millennials, born roughly between 81 and 85, or the Xennials, who are now in their early 40s, experienced it all together, not in our own isolated, personally curated, digital doom scrolling bubble. Man, see, I love the way that sounds. I love the way I got to read that again. Experienced it all together, not in our own isolated, personally curated, digital doom scrolling bubble. Brilliant, brilliantly said. We talked, scared each other, and even joked about it all, but in a human and connected way. Remember in last week's video where I talked about how Roth's friends, that age of Gen Z, the 15, about to be 16-year-olds, remember how I said they acted a lot like us? They, bust each other's chops and make fun of each other. They roast each other, but they do it in a friendly way. Just like they said here, they're human about it, and in a connected way is how we did it. I mean, we had to. We didn't have the digital, spectrum that the kids have today. We shared everything from the Smiths' first LP to Tony Blair's Landslide and Lockerbie to probably even 9/11. We coped together. Some eyes might roll when the latest celebrity or reality TV star name checks a new mental health acronym. Excuse me. But we've taken notice of the developments in openness in dealing with trauma. Most therapists are now Gen Xers, but then so are an increasing number of their parents. We adapt, and it's what this generation does. And we've learned to do so whilst at the crest of a wave of more rapid and radical technology and societal change than at any other point in human history. And that is true. we were there at the advent of a lot of this technology that is so prevalent today. The cell phone, the big brick phones, um, you know, computers, being bigger than the size of this room at one point to now being, you know, a computer that you hold in your hand. I mean, we were there for all of it, and over it's quite scary over the last 30 years. The advances that we've done in technology um, are crazy. They really are. We have taken the digital revolution in our stride, eschewing the elements that we don't need, embracing those that we do, and remaining brand loyal to the ones that we like. We might not text with our thumbs like stenographers on speed, but most of us tend not to send dick pics either. Bizarrely, you might even see a Gen Zer today with an old school camcorder, as I have done twice recently. Um, I just like the picture quality. I was told it's different, warmer, more authentic, and that's the thing. So, like with Roth, they have this new 4K, digital camcorder. Um, Looks kind of like the early 2000s versions, but now it's 4K. He uses one of those to film his videos versus just his phone. And he even bought him like a knockoff GoPro, and that's fine. But the kids just like that tactile experience of holding the camcorder, flipping the screen, and then holding it like that. I actually have camcorder down there, and I have two in my rad cave. They don't work. This one actually does work, but I just haven't messed with it yet with the smaller cassettes that go in there. But it is just cool. And if it was easy to upload and do stuff like that, I'd probably do it like that. But now we have filters that do that for us, right? Continuing on. It seems the generations that came after the forgotten Generation X seem to think we might be on to something, and probably also on something at the same time. Gen X parents took their Gen Z kids to the Face Magazine, Culture Shift, Expedition at the National Portrait Gallery, and they soaked in the vibe and now reinventing it for a new tribe. Again, in England, I don't know what that is, but have I taken my kids to places like that? Yeah. I mean, not, done to museums, certain music and concerts. I was just actually the Lords of Acid were just in San Antonio this past Friday, and I really considered taking Roth to it. I've seen them before. Um, Overly, I mean, they're great live, but if you know the Lords of Acid, he's not going to learn anything new that he doesn't know already from listening to their music. But you know, I decided to be a good parent and not take him, but I thought about it. So um, this summer's Oasis reunion will be an even split between kids on energy drinks and vapes and their 50 something dads with well in haircuts, the mod look, a la Peter Weller, but not always flattering the older gentleman. That would be cool to see Oasis. And it's not just the music and fashion our children are buying into it either. It is what best-selling author and former indie journalist Jojo Moyes believes to be this a state of mind. I'm 55, she explains, recently divorced and seeing an old flame from the 1990s. When my nan was my age, she had a blue rinse. I'm still trying to get into my leather jeans and my Bover boots. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It's not even like mutton dressed as lamb. We just have a completely different worldview. And that is what Gen Z noticed or seemed to have instinctively felt. They are our children after all, right? We raise them. In difficult and dangerous times, there is only one thing for it. It's time to party like it's 1999 or maybe even 1992. So, what'd you think of that article? I think it's good. Again, a couple of things in there that, you make the statement that we don't let things bother us, but then you put in your writing that these things bother you. So, with that said, it's still a great article. It's always good to see how things are done overseas, right, from a different perspective. Um, Again, the nightlife out there, I can imagine, is just insane in England, right? But anyway, with that said, what are your thoughts? Drop a comment below. Let me know about what you think about the article. Add any comments to it, And with that said, if it's something you enjoyed, please consider giving the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, maybe even share it out to some of your friends. Hit the little share button, copy it, and then go to your text messages and drop it in there and send to your friends and say, hey, check out this great channel. And then hit that bell to be notified of future videos. And with that said, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.